Somewhere on the coast of British Columbia, there is a tree that is partly made of fish. Not fed by fish, not growing near fish, made of them. Cut into the trunk and read the rings backwards, and you can find the years the salmon came, and the years they didn't. The evidence is written into the wood. To understand how that happens, you have to start with a problem. A temperate rainforest looks like abundance. Endless green, endless water, endless light. But it is starving for one thing: nitrogen. It's the element every living thing needs to build protein and DNA, and it is the single hardest ingredient for a plant to get. The air around you is 78% nitrogen, but it's locked in a molecule so tightly bonded that a tree can't touch it. So in this forest, nitrogen is the bottleneck. Everything is waiting for it. Which raises a question. If the soil is that poor, how are these some of the largest trees on Earth? The answer arrives from the Pacific Ocean: swimming. A salmon spends most of its life at sea. It eats there, it grows there. Every atom of its body is assembled out of ocean nitrogen, concentrated over years into a few kilograms of muscle and fat and bone. Then, at the end of its life, it does something almost no other nutrient does. It swims back, upstream, uphill, inland, against gravity, without being carried, for free. Millions of parcels of ocean delivering themselves into the mountains. Then they spawn, and then they die. All of them. But here's the problem with that. A dead fish lying in a river is still in the river. The current takes it, the water takes it back toward the sea, and the forest gets nothing. Something has to physically lift those bodies out of the water and carry them into the trees. That something is a bear. Tom Reimchen, a biologist at the University of Victoria, spent years watching this happen at a small stream in Haida. He found something that seems obvious once you hear it, and that nobody had properly measured before. Bears very rarely eat at the water's edge. They catch a fish, and then they haul it into the forest to eat it in cover, away from other bears. A single bear can move hundreds of fish in a season, dropping them tens of meters from the stream, sometimes more than 100. And when salmon are running thick, the bears get picky. They eat the richest parts and abandon the rest. That waste is the whole point. Every half-eaten carcass is a package of ocean nitrogen, sitting on a forest floor that has been short of nitrogen for 10,000 years. And the delivery doesn't stop there. Blowflies find the carcass within hours. Their larvae strip it, then crawl off into the soil. And birds eat the larvae, and the nitrogen keeps moving outward through the food web in 100 small increments. What entered the forest as one fish leaves the clearing as insects, droppings, and soil. So how do you actually prove a tree is eating salmon? You use the fact that nitrogen comes in two slightly different weights. Most of it is the lighter version, nitrogen-14. A small fraction is the heavier, nitrogen-15. Marine food chains concentrate the heavy one, step by step, as small things get eaten by bigger things. By the time you get to an adult salmon, its tissue carries a distinctly heavy nitrogen signature, one that is unmistakably oceanic. Which means the ocean labels its own nitrogen. Find that heavy signature in a spruce needle 100 meters up a hillside, and there is only one place it can have come from. That's exactly what James Helfield and Robert Naiman found. Working in Alaska, they measured Sitka spruce growing beside salmon spawning reaches, and reported that a substantial share of the nitrogen in those trees carried the marine signature. Roughly a quarter of it, on average, had been in the Pacific Ocean. Then, they measured how fast the trees grew. Spruce beside salmon streams were putting on wood around 3 times faster than equivalent trees without them, reaching in under a century, a size that would otherwise take 300 years. Same species, same rainfall, same light. The difference was fish. And the effect isn't uniform, which turns out to matter. Thomas Quinn and Scott Gendy, working on bear foraging behavior, showed that how much a bear leaves behind depends on how many fish there are. In a big year, bears eat selectively, taking the fattiest parts and walking away from the rest. In a poor year, they eat the whole animal. So the forest gets fed most generously, precisely in the years the run is strongest. The good years aren't just good for salmon, they're good for trees, decades later, in a ring you can point to. Does that change what the forest actually is? Morgan Hocking and John Reynolds tested that directly, surveying dozens of streams across the British Columbia coast with very different salmon densities. What they found is that the plants themselves sort out by fish. Where salmon are abundant, species that thrive on rich soil, like salmonberry, take over. Where salmon are scarce, species adapted to poverty hold their ground. The salmon aren't only feeding the forest, they're choosing which forest it becomes. And then the loop closes. Those trees lean over the stream and shade it, keeping the water cold enough for eggs to survive. Their roots hold the banks together, so the gravel the salmon need doesn't wash away. Their leaves fall in and feed the insects that juvenile salmon eat. And eventually, the trees themselves fall in, and the trunks create the deep, slow pools where the next generation shelters before heading out to sea. The fish build the forest builds the fish. Neither one is upstream of the other, which is why the modern version of this story is quieter than it should be. Many rivers on this coast now carry a small fraction of the salmon they once did. The forest beside them doesn't collapse. Nothing dramatic happens. The trees just grow a little slower. The soil gets a little poorer. The understory shifts, and the whole thing unwinds on a timescale measured in tree rings rather than headlines. You can stand in a starving forest, and it will still look green. So no, there isn't a tree on the coast of British Columbia that is partly made of fish. There are millions of them, standing in rows along every river, holding the ocean up in the air.